Hey, what's up everybody? Hey, MP here. I wanted to talk a little bit about entity metadata wrappers. For those of you who aren't familiar, they're a really awesome way of getting field information out of your entities. So for instance, grabbing the value of a field from your node is as easy as doing node wrapper, field number, get the value from it. It's that simple, rather than dealing with all of this mess trying to figure out arrays, what the structure of them is. It's just so nice to be able to do this. And they have a bunch of different things going on. You can quickly get from a node to the node author and have access to the node author's fully put together user object really quickly. You can get the URL from a file field extremely easy, which is what we'll look at doing here in our example. But if you're not using them, I highly recommend you get started with them. And really, one of the barriers for me working with them is I was so used to working with just the standard array. So for instance, if we're in our template.php and we're looking at this SVG content type here, if I wanted to see what all information I had access to, I would just crumo or dpm out the variables. If it will load, there we go. So I'd take a look here, and here's everything I have access to that I can manipulate. So here we have the field SVG, and if I dig down into it, look at all that information I have. I have the file name and the URI and everything. So I have everything at my fingertips here that I would need access to. The problem is it's pretty cumbersome to work with. So what entity metadata wrappers allows you to do is allows you to have a really structured way of accessing that information. So for me, I think, oh, okay, well, I just load up my node here into a metadata wrapper. That's how easy it is to do. Just give it the type of entity that you want and the actually node the entity object, and bam, it'll return that object into a metadata wrapper. So naturally, I just put that into the crumo so I can see everything that I have in there. And what the heck? Don't have access to anything. And it's because we have to access it in a little bit of a different way. And I'm ashamed to say that I've been using them for a couple years now, and today I just read the documentation to describe how you would get access to find out all that information that entity metadata wrappers has about that object. So if hopefully you weren't like me, but if you were, you just totally missed reading all this documentation. And in there is, if I can find it, getting information about properties and fields. I wonder what this is about. Geez, if only I would have read this 2 years ago. So basically it says if you want to get information about the metadata wrapper, all you have to do is run the getPropertyInfo, and you'll be able to see what type of information you have access to in that object. So let's try it out. So we'll go in here and we'll say getPropertyInfo. And we'll refresh a few times just to be sure. And okay, here we go. We've got something. So here are all the fields that we have access to in that metadata wrapper, right? So if we look in here, we see all of the information about this field. What type of field it is, the type of access callbacks it has, some really good information. And then what we also have is this has a nested field in here. I'm not sure what you would call it. But anyhow, it has another nested field in here that's called file. So we know that we have access to some file information if we want to. So let's go ahead and take a look at what information we have in that file. Oops. Come on. Oop, I'm sorry. Field SVG. Let's start with that first. And we'll refresh a million times. And okay, so like we thought, we have access to that file in there. So let's go ahead. And now let's dive into that file and see what we got. Okay, and we have some additional information. So we can get the FID, the unique ID of the uploaded file. We can get the name of it, and it has a description of exactly, what this field actually is on here. Then we also have the URL for this file. Now, if you remember, whenever we DPM the variables, we didn't have access to the URL. We had access to the URI, which is a little different. So the URI would allow us to then go out and get the URL to that file, but we would have to do it using a Drupal function. But Entity Metadata Wrapper knows that this is an upload file and knows that, hey, you probably just want the URL, right? So it just puts it in there. So if we contrast that with the information that we would get if we would let's just get the raw value, not the raw value, but let's get the values that are just stored normally in the database about that file field, we would get this. So just the URI, whereas Entity Metadata Wrapper, you get access to the URL, which is what we want. So like I said, really nice way of dealing with it. So now what we can do is, how easy is it to work with that? We can just say, get me the URL value of that file. And let's see actually what this will give us before we do anything with it. We'll put that into a Crumo. And then we'll have 3 different Crumos going on, and bam. Straight up have access to the URL. So now we'll take that and we'll put it right in there. And yay, now our URL is showing up. So pretty cool. getPropertyInfo with the metadata wrapper equals just happiness. Yay. All right, hope you enjoyed it. Later.